Namaste. Welcome to another edition of Navimash podcast. So, after a long time, we are reading a book and also in the weekday. So, was busy with a lot of work, so could not read book. But I think I picked up this book. If you can see on my left hand side, social warming, the dangers of polarizing effects of social media. So, I think most of us who are watching this and people who are not watching this, somewhere down the line, they have interacted with social media in one way or the other via social media platforms. You have X, Facebook, even YouTube, and there are many other social media platforms which are there. So I thought let's read this book. So I picked up this book while I was traveling, trying to catch a flight, and I read a few parts of the book. So now, as a customary, let me just first share you the book where you can get this book. This is a very interesting book, a very timely book. There are many books written on social media, uh, surveillance capitalism. There are many other things, but this book is most accessible in terms of general people will be able to understand the dangers of social media and how there are unforeseen consequences of social media, which we do not see immediately, but they do have a big impact on our psychology, on our behavior, the way we connect with our family, our friends, our parents, everything. Social media is having a very great impact in our, especially on our social relationships, the relationship we have with our family or our friends or our colleagues as well. So let me just quickly go through this. Let me get the screen ready. So here is, so this book is available in Amazon. You can get it on any other platform as well, but it's an international book, so Amazon would be a better option because you might not get it in your local bookstore or in your regional bookstore. So I have pinned the link as well in the chat, so you can get that as well. So this is the book costs around 550 rupees, quite a good discount actually, and it has some very good information, very good. How would I say? It gives you a warning. It gives you a warning. It gives you information how social media is impacting your life, which is unforeseen, which is not seen in our daily life, but it does change our behavior in general, and how even elections are being affected by social media platforms, social media narratives. Now, narrative is a very important part of elections, and narrative building has become a kind of a social media game. So, we will try to also take audience questions, and we'll request audience to, if they want to join, they can join as well. Okay, we'll request them to share their questions as well. But without any delay, let's go ahead and read the book. So, okay, let me share this screen. So this book is also available in actually Google Books. So let me see if the text is good enough. Yeah, the text looks good enough. Maybe I can open another one. Let me just. hmm, Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let me check. I have the PDF as well, so I can use that as well. Let me see if I can get that. And then people will be able to come and join because we are coming live for a long time. Let's go through the PDF itself. It might be a better option. And if the audience is listening to this, they can just comment and see if they're able to read the text or not. So we will go through that as well. And is the audio is clear or not? Let me check the audio as well. Yeah, audio looks good. No issues. Let's start reading the book itself. So, social warming, the dangers of polarizing effects of social media. So the cover jacket shows like this. It reads like science fiction, except he's describing our world right now. Ian Dunt. The author is Charles Arthur. Now we're going to try to read the book. Now we're going to read the prologue first, and then we will go into the chapter number 3 called Amplifications and Algorithms. But let's go through the prologue first to get an understanding of the author. Prologue. The shape of the problem. Nobody meant for this to happen. Everything was meant to get better, not worse. In January 2007, Steve Jobs, Apple's then chief executive, held aloft a little device in his hand. This is a revolution of the first order to really bring the real internet to your phone. He announced until then the internet had largely been confined to PC. Only a few million people had an internet capable phone, and even they had limited capacity for viewing or interacting with online content. Do let me know if you can read the text. I have increased it, so it should be fine. Social networks were in their infancy. Facebook had 12 million users, having just opened up to the world beyond US university students the previous summer. About the same time as it had patented the software for a news feed that would pick out the most interesting status updates from your friend. Twitter was less than a year old and had tens of thousands of users. YouTube had been bought 2 months earlier by Google for 1.65 billion, a price seen as astonishing the site's despite the site's estimated 70 million monthly users. Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, originally defined its purpose as to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. He tweaked that slightly a few years later to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer. The broad sweep was clear: to get people to communicate with each other more easily and directly. In just over a decade, the world has gone time from a time when barely anyone owned a smartphone to one where more than 4 billion of the world's 7.6 billion do, and almost all of them connected to social networks. Walk today Walk. Walk today down a street past a construction site, past a coffee shop, past a parent pushing a pram, and you will see the same thing. People gazing down at their smartphones, flicking through screenful, screenfuls of posts, photos, videos, and comments. Smartphones have replaced cigarettes. Interesting. Smartphones have replaced cigarettes as the perfect filler for those empty moments, waiting waiting for trains, meals, or a friend. Pull it out of your pocket, watch it light up, uh, suck it in, and relax. So what the author means is that smartphones has smartphones has this addictive feature where you get addicted to smartphones, and that is something which is quite interesting in terms of how addictive smartphones are, internet are, and how little we talk about it, give attention to this. The author is talking about that tobacco has been replaced by smartphone addiction, or we call screen addiction. Do keep your comments up. There are no comments as of now, so I will take a look at the comments periodically till we read the book. Let's read ahead. Just as smokers can measure their cigarette consumption in packs, we can measure our social media consumption in screens. In 2017, a Facebook executive said the average person scrolls through 300 feet of social media feeds per day on their phone. That's about that's about 750 screens worth consumed over an average of 2 hours per day. Social media as a clutch may be akin to smoking. Smoking something to do with our hands that also steadies our mind. But the cumulative effect is such is much more akin to global warming. Okay, that's interesting. So it says, but the cumulative effect is much more akin to global warming, pervasive, subtle, relentless, and most of all, caused by our own actions and inclinations. Okay, this is something interesting that the social media addiction is compared to global warming, and that's why the book's name is as well, social warming. That's a interesting analogy being given by the author. It says global warming, pervasive, subtle, relentless. These are very heavy words. Subtle means that you don't realize you are walking into a trap. Relentless means you are being bombarded with social media across various directions, and most of all caused by our own actions. We have we have become a kind of, so what used to happen, like if you need to call somebody, then you would pick up your phone and call that person. Now the phone controls your behavior, like you are addicted to this phone, this social media, and subconsciously you would pick up your phone even if you do not need it. That's called our own actions and inclinations. That we use social media to fill our downtime is not a problem in itself. Very accurate comment. That we use social media to fill our downtime is not a problem in itself. Few would be few would be reading War and Peace instead, like I am trying to do. Although I am in social media, but I am using social media to read a book about social media. Interesting. But this use is closely but this use is closely monitored. The experience is individually tailored. Now, focus on these lines, very important. But this use is closely monitored. The experience is individually tailored, and herein lies the harm. Since social networks become widespread, Facebook has been implicated in a Facebook has been implicated in a genocide. Twitter became the battleground for a misogynistic campaign leading to serious real world threats and attacks. And YouTube has been accused of enabling the radicalization first of Muslim jihadis and then of right wing white men who would go on to kill. Women have received death and I'll not read that. Threats for campaigns about a banknote. Football stars have been targeted for anonymous racist abuse from 12-year-olds. And two men who were brought together by an algorithm that spotted they were interested in the same topic started communicating in a Facebook group and decided to act. The topic was causing a civil war, and the action was to kill a police officer. So, social media has real world implications, as we see that it can cause real harm, it can cause real incidents down our streets, physical streets, not virtual streets. These aren't aberrations. Social networks have these results when used as These aren't aberrations. Social networks have these results when used as intended, as designed. Now, these are very important words. Social networks have these results when used as intended, as designed. After all, you are supposed to connect with like-minded people. Hmm. The same pattern of events keeps happening when social networks are involved. Small differences are amplified into bigger disagreements, and the people on either side of those positions are drawn towards extremes of belief or action. These networks are optimized to consume our attention. This word is very important. Attention. So now we live in a world where we have attention economy. These networks are optimized to consume our attention and powered by software that feeds powered by software that feeds on and exploits our inherent tendencies towards outrage and polarization. As long as social networks stick to their current design, events like this will keep happening and get worse as number of people using those networks increases. And in the next 5 years, another billion people will be able to access smartphones. We are living in an age of social warming, a side effect and unintended consequence of technological advance making our lives more convenient. We call it warming. Just hold on for a sec. Sorry, I had a phone call, so no problem. Cool. Let's go through the reading. We call it warming because it's gradual. Gradualism means we don't quite notice the point at which things shift for the worse. Now, this is important. We call it warming because it's gradual. Gradualism means we don't quite notice the point at which things shift for the worse. So correct. When we were reading this, we saw the word subtle. That how your emotions are being affected and most times manipulated to do something, to feel something, and you don't realize it that it is happening because you're consuming social media. So that's an important part of it. Social change isn't marked by abrupt shifts, but by almost im- by almost imperceptible changes in behavior and habits that are only obvious in retrospect. So your behavior, your change in behavior, your change in food habits, your change in your friends, your change in whom you talk to, what kind of topics you like, what kind of books you read, what kind of people you communicate with. These are all changes happening in a gradual manner, and you don't realize it. The change is happening until the change is visible and that boundary is already crossed. So it says obvious in retrospect. If you go back and analyze those events, then you realize, okay, I was reading this kind of books, and now I am reading another kind of books. To take a trivial example, photos. Films and photos from the 1940s 40s show almost all men wearing formal hats outside, which they raise, which they raise to which they raise to passing women, and everyone seems to be smoking. Nowadays, men don't wear formal hats and hardly anyone smokes, but there was never a single moment when men suddenly stopped wearing hats. Doing so just became less common as more people rode in cars, where a hat was an inconvenience. And interesting how behavior change happens. When people were not driving to office or to other location by a car, people would wear hat. But if you're wearing a hat inside a car, uncomfortable, and it's not very convenient. So slowly, the wearing of hats became little bit more uncommon, and after a decade or two, it became non-existent. But there was never a single moment when men suddenly stopped wearing hats. Doing so just became less common as more people rode in cars where a hat was an inconvenience, and as younger public figures such as John F. Kennedy, who never wore one, and the Beatles, who would never have dreamt of it, dreamt of it, came to prominence. Nor, nor has okay, nor has the male need for a head covering in cold weather gone away. The formal hat industry mutated into the baseball cap and bean industry. Social warming arises from the desire to have a computer, the smartphone, that's allied with our hunger for information and desire to connect with more people and more people. Its effects have only become noticeable as the adoption and power of social networks and smartphones has grown large enough to begin shifting our behavior significantly. Social warming Social warming happens when interactions between people who used to be geographically separated and infrequently exposed to each other's views are more frequently brought together and kept in orbit around the topics that will engage them and create addictive experiences. Only when only when you look back only when you look back does the change becomes obvious. The effects occur, though, all the time. The political sphere, democracy, media, people in the streets, all are being affected. Social warming comes about through a three-way interaction. Interesting. First, first is the parallel rise of smartphone availability and social network accessibility. Second, each platform is able to learn and amplify what captures our attention, getting us getting us to log in more frequently and for longer. Third, the amplification is unregulated and unrestricted. Partly, this is by design. People using the system is good for business, and partly it's by management and partly it's by management fiat through a prescription against censorship. This repeated process of ubiquity, amplification, and indifference, and its continuation defines social warming. Without the platform, it couldn't happen. So, even if you have the smartphone, even if you have a cheap internet, you will not have this social media if you do not have the networks, the platforms. It couldn't. So without the platform, it couldn't happen. So it's a network effect. There are multiple critical parameters which create an impact. Without the amplification, we wouldn't notice it. Without the indifference to the effects, we wouldn't be exposed to them. And if it didn't keep happening, we wouldn't be so concerned. Yet there are signs that the wider public is aware of what's happening. That we glimpse it out of the corner of the eye. We know it's there, yet can't quite catch sight of it. In May 2020, the UK NGO okay, it says Dot Brian, which aims to get the whole of the UK connected, published its final digital attitudes report, looking at people's attitude towards technology. Among the findings was that Among the findings was this odd fact. People people thought the internet was better for them as individuals than for society as a whole. Okay, that's an interesting concept, interesting comment which has come. Let me see. Okay, we don't see a lot of people coming in, but fine. We'll read along, and if people have any questions, we'll try to answer them. Okay, that's an interesting comment we have seen. Among the findings was this odd fact. People thought the internet was better. Let me see again. People thought the internet was better for them as individuals than for society as a whole. Now, that's a contradictory comment. The gap was large. 80% felt internet made life a little or lot better for them, but only 58% felt that the internet had had a positive effect on society. Okay, that's interesting. The gulf in attitudes was unchanged from the first version of the study carried out 2 years previously. What did what did what did that tell us? People say, I like the convenience. Okay, so now the author is interpreting the comments and the data which was shown, which was gathered by UK NGO, not everyone. Now the author is interpreting the data in a way where we can understand it. The gulf in attitude was unchanged for the first version of the study carried out 2 years previously. What did that tell us? Interesting. People say, I like the convenience of being I like the convenience of being able to do online shopping, but I worry I worry that my high street is suffering as a result. Catherine Miller, then not everyone's interim chief executive, told me, I think there is a sense that you get immediate personal gratification from these services through technology, but you see the societal impact. There's there's not a direct line between me doing my shopping in my pajamas at 2 in the morning and my my high street looking sad and shabby. But I think there is a sense that the accumulated impact on society are more obvious than the negative impact on individuals. Interesting. It says, but I think there is a sense that the accumulated impact on society are more obvious than the negative impact on individuals. Miller points to how conflicted Miller points to how conflicted we feel over this, even when it comes to social media. This is our infrastructure. This is our infrastructure. I could try and delete Facebook, but then I wouldn't know. Then I wouldn't know where my children's football match is taking place this weekend. My partner, my partner boycotts WhatsApp, which is a source of intense irritation to me because it means that I get all the messages about where the football match is taking place that I then have to copy and text to him text to him so he knows which pitch to turn up at. Her partner's boycott is principled one. She says he doesn't like the business. He doesn't like Facebook. He doesn't like Zuckerberg. He doesn't want it want it to be part of it. But she adds, I think that's a fairly niche view these days. If your focus is on social media aspect of things, I think it really is important to recognize the lack of meaningful choices. It means if you don't use social media, you are left with little or no choice. Ben Grosser, an artist and professor at the University of Illinois, points out that the companies rely on keeping us hooked because otherwise they would cease to exist. These companies have no value without people donating their time and their media to the system, he told me. So ultimately, what matters to Facebook, what matters to Twitter, At least what matters to their shareholders is that there's an endless stream of users, ideally, ideally an always increasing number of users who are staying on the platform as much as possible, putting content into it. That content insertion then produces the data they can use for advertising. You want to escape, but you can't. Even if you don't directly contribute to social warming, everyone around you does. Even if even if even you had told Gottlieb Daimler or Rudolf Diesel, okay, Daimler is the car company which revolutionized cars, and you have Rudolf Diesel who invented the diesel engine which runs our cars till now. So if you had told Gottlieb Daimler and Rudolf Diesel in the 1890s that their designs for fuel-driven engines would, in little over a century's time, be held responsible for rising sea levels, catastrophic hurricanes, and the forced migration of millions of people, they would have struggled to believe you. Their intent was honest and simple. They wanted to build efficient machines that would be used by people to improve their lives. The steam engines of the time were horrendously wasteful, burning coal and bleaching out smoke. With fuel efficiency of less than 10%, petrol and diesel were more than twice as efficient. How could using less fuel be a bad thing? How could democratizing transport and making it more widely available be wrong? The automobile engine will come and then I will consider my life's work complete, Diesel once said. The inventors of internal combustion engine is called ICE, internal combustion engines. Modern equivalent, the social networks have similar Pollyannish aims. Facebook aimed to connect everyone. YouTube promised to let you broadcast yourself. Twitter would give everyone the power to create and share ideas. But embedded in the systems behind each embedded embedded in the systems behind each slogan was the mechanism to fascinate, outrage, and eventually antagonize. That third effect matters. Social warming shows up as polarization, whether political or cultural. It is a sort of social heat, creating the potential for friction in any interaction with someone you don't know, whether in person or online, but particularly the latter. And with those who do too, many people have had the experience of discovering that a relative is perfectly happy to be racist on Facebook and to spew misinformation that you would never expect them to utter face to face. Polarization isn't good for society because it creates barriers to a collective action that can benefit everyone. A classic example was in reaction in American states in 2020 to health measures that would reduce the potential for coronavirus infection. Because the public health discussion became polarized across party lines, some areas and groups ignored health advice about lockdowns and mask wearing. People died who might otherwise have lived. Yet, it's hard to intuit a connection between retweeting a snide remark or angry headlines and a country where half the population are unwilling to wear something public as a public health measure. Just as it's hard to make the connection between driving a car to the shops a mile away and melting of Greenland's ice sheets. Societies function best when they have common aims that bring people together, despite their destructive despite their destructive effects. Natural disasters and wars provide a common goal for which differences are put aside. But social networks are built around division. Very important point to be noted. Why social media has a lot of bad side effects. Social media, but social networks are built around division. They amplify differences by allowing every tiny variation in beliefs or interest to take on a life of its own. So, what author is saying that I might have a difference with my friend that French fries are good or bad. I might think, okay, this is good. My friend says it is bad. Now, what social media does, it amplifies that small bit of difference, which is doesn't really matter to him or me, because I am not forcing him to go and have French fries, and he is not telling me that you are not my friend. You are not my friend if you consume French fries. What social media does, it amplifies the small differences into blown up proportions, which creates friction among individuals, among societies. By allowing every tiny variation in belief or interest to take on a life of its own. Even more, the dynamics of the dynamics of self-selecting online groups will drive them further and further away from common ground with other groups whose views differ even slightly from their own. Rather than providing a medium for societies to unite, social networks actually work in the opposite direction by giving everyone a way to discover their differences. That is social warming, the background effect that gradually, subtly, and insistently makes people concentrate on their differences rather than what they have in common. But wasn't it always? But wasn't it always like this? Isn't online interaction always more heated than real life and nothing comes of it? Usually, except when people threaten to kill MPs or someone radicalized by a stream of videos picked picked for them picked for them by the software that powers a site goes on a shooting spree against their chosen enemies, a race, a religion, anything. At that point, something has evidently changed, and the online world where things don't matter and it's all just words on a screen is bleeding into is bleeding into the offline one, where you really can drop things on your foot. Our phones and social media identities have become our virtual homes. When a virtual mob begins targeting you, the effect isn't like being on a football pitch. It's not a wall of it's not a wall of unintelligible slurs. Even insult on social media is isolated. It is as if each member of the mob were whispering in your ear. The suggestions that you just delete your account or just ignore it is the same as suggesting that you move home or stay indoors. We cannot ignore these effects because there will be okay because they will not sort themselves. Okay, we cannot ignore these effects because they will not sort themselves out. Facebook, Google can be used to swing elections. Facebook is proud of its ability to persuade millions of voters to register and even to turn out to vote. Yet one of its executives, Katie Harbert, was also prepared to accept that the election of Rodrigo Duarte in the Philippines in early 2016, following a brutal social media blitz of misinformation and personal attacks on opponents, made the country patient zero in electoral interference through social media. He then went on to cite the Brexit referendum in the UK and the 2016 US presidential elections as other examples. The side effects of social networks grow geometrically faster than the networks themselves. Okay, that's interesting. Lot interesting. Okay, the side effects of social networks grow geometrically faster than the networks themselves. Hmm. But the legislative systems they have effectively encircled can't respond at the same speed. Legislators work over periods of years while social networks can roll out new updates in weeks or months. By the time committee of members of parliament in the UK came to consider the problem of fake news in January 2017, the 2016 US presidential elections and Brexit referendum that had made the topic urgent had long since passed, and a tweak, a tweak to Facebook's and Google software had pushed the problem out of sight for most people. The committee was then dissolved by an election. The final report appeared in July 2018. No laws were passed. Social network companies are reluctant, however, to take ownership of the consequences of their choices. They are happy to take credit for the positive effects, such as when people can check in on Facebook to confirm they are alive after natural disaster, or activists can use Twitter to record wrongful arrest, or you can find the instructional video for fixing your lawnmower on YouTube. Yet, when they help Nazis and provocateurs to organize into closed groups, enable harassment, or send vulnerable people down the rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, their response is apologetic and puzzled. How did that happen? They ask. The downsides, what economists call the negative externalities, what economists call the negative externalities, became a problem for society to deal with and pay for, even though the software driven amplifications of outrage and interaction caused those effects in the first place. Nor is there any clear way to bring external pressure to bear on the networks to make them directly answerable for those effects. Facebook and Google have corporate structures in which their chief executives and founders hold a majority of the voting shares, insulating them from insulating them from shareholders' ire. Literally, the only person who can remove Mark Zuckerberg from his position at the top of his company is Mark Zuckerberg. The only shareholder Larry Page and Sergey Brin answers to at Google and hence YouTube are themselves. They own about 80% of the voting stock. Twitter has more straightforward ownership structure where shares have voting rights equal to founders. Interesting. Looking ahead to where those new mobile internet connections and smartphones will be found in the next 5 years, almost all will be in less developed countries in regions such as sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, where weaker democratic and media systems will find it harder to withstand the onslaught of untruth and distortion. What then happens to democracy? What happens to truth? What happens when a population can't even agree about what happened a day or a month ago, or who won an election, and those disagreements are reinforced every time they look at the device in their hands? Or what about when it's cheaper and easier to get misinformation than to get facts? This is something which we need to delve into. What about when it's cheaper and easier to get misinformation than to get facts, as it is the case in number of countries where mobile carriers offer deals that make Facebook or WhatsApp free, but access to search engine or news site paid for. This is this is an emergency. It needs to be tackled by recognizing the toxic effects and removing the elements that enable them. The incitement to outrage, the algorithmic nudging, the pretense that throwing everyone into one giant room and encouraging them to shout at one another, or even flatter one another will make them happier in the long run. Antonio Garcia Martinez, who worked on Facebook's most successful efforts to make money from advertising, noted in his book Chaos Monkey that even a little bit of difference is worthwhile if your network's big enough. Interesting. To the criticism that any individual Facebook advert didn't bring in much money, he responded that a billion times any number is still a big number. We should be we should be a lot more worried than we currently are about these big numbers. Only then we stand a chance of figuring out what to do. Now we are going to read I'm going to read the chapter 3 because 3 is very interesting chapter, and we're going to finish today's reading by reading the chapter. Amplification and algorithms. The watcher beneath your screen. An algorithm is a fabulous name for something simple, a set of rules. We first encountered them as children in those semi-magic semi-magic tricks where you are told to think of a number, double it, add something to it, take away some other number, quite often the number you first thought of it, manipulate in a bit more, and the answer is 2. Follow the rules and the outcome is certain. Algorithms are everywhere in computer algorithms are everywhere in our computer programming. Knitted together, they produce programs of incredible complexity that can even be self-adjusting, tweaking themselves to account for changing imbalances between their input and desired output. So, in the above example, you will tell it the number you wanted to get, and the algorithm would change the equation to achieve that outcome. Or they can appear to mimic intelligence. If you train a machine learning system as machine ML systems, also known as neural network, because it can behave like a collection of nerve cells in the brain. By showing it a set of 10,000 videos containing cats and then another 10,000 that don't, it should be able to tell whether or not a previously unseen video features a cat. At that point, the ML system is not using anything as simple as a fixed recipe. Instead, it is more like a cook who searches for the perfect meal by constantly varying the ingredients in dishes and closely monitoring how eagerly diners eat them up. Although, to extend the analogy, the self-adjusting element means you can't look into the kitchen to find out how the meal was cooked. Even 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 for the creator of the system, all you know is what you get and what ingredients may have gone in. ML systems are also improving rapidly. In 2013, the British company DeepMind set up a ML system connected to a number of video games such as Pong, two-dimensional table tennis, and Breakout, bouncing a ball of a paddle towards a wall of bricks. To master Breakout, the system was given control of the screen paddle and simply told that a higher score was better with no hints on rules, strategies, and tactics. Within 50 hours, it could play Breakout and some of the other games better than human assigned to the task. When I visited the DeepMind office not long after, A friend who worked here told me, yes, we really do. We really do have a guy whose job is just to play Atari games. The algorithm improves exponentially in 2015, a year after Google had bought DeepMind for its ML capabilities. A descendant of the breakout beating program called AlphaGo defeated the human world champion at Go. The Chinese game played on a 19 is to 19 board by 4 to 1 in a 5 match series. It could legitimately be called the world champion. Until then, no Go playing computer had ever beaten a top ranked professional player in an even game. In marked contrast to chess, where the world champion had lost to a computer back in 1996, a couple of years after AlphaGo win, another descendant of that program called AlphaZero taught itself to play chess and then beat the best dedicated chess computer in the course of a single day. No surprise, therefore, that such ML systems are becoming more and more common, and increasingly companies hand over essential tasks to them. On Facebook, on Facebook, ML is the technology used to drive suggestions to pages you might like or people you might know. According to Annie, Annie L. on the company's corporate careers page, the newsfeed team works on machine learning algorithm to surface the most relevant stories from people and pages in your connections. We do this by developing models that take in personalized signals from your social graph. I also love that Facebook recommends group based on common interests. He adds Facebook's habit of obscuring staff names so that they sound like okay, encomiums encomiums for the dubious skin treatment is peculiar. Since a quick web search reveals Dr. Annie Liu full name, Dr. Annie Liu's full name, education and work background, including brief stints at IBM and Google. Machine learning is increasingly at the core of everything we build at Twitter, noted Jack Dorsey in June 2016. It is powering much of the work we are it is much of the work we are doing to make it easier to create, share, and discover very best content. He continued. His blog post was announcing the acquisition of a London based AI company called Magic Pony, which specialized in analyzing video, a content form that machines struggle to analyze, unlike text. The analyst, Rob Ender, Enderle, suggested that being able to do that could turn Twitter into a real time news aggregator if it could pull together disparate, uh, disparate videos about the same topic. That he said would provide a level of coverage a TV network would envy. In turn, Endel suggested that could be both compelling and huge ad revenue generator, but it might also be a means of exacerbating social warming, linking people to radical groups they might not otherwise have joined, encouraging virtual pylons, pushing people to the extremes of conspiracy theories, all because that would fit what the algorithm were programmed to measure as good, even if humans affected would see that way. Trouble with algorithm is that you can design them to work in a way that seems sensible or which you might think even is clever. But the interaction of two or more algorithms designed around the same purpose can create weird effects, which brings us to Michael Eisen and Michael Eisen and the 22 million book. Eisen is a professor of computational biology at the University of California, Berkeley, and one day in 2011 was alerted by one of his students by one of his students to the price of a textbook on Amazon. Students often complain about textbook prices, but this was different. A fresh copy, a fresh copy of an out-of-print 1992 textbook about fruit fly genetics was being offered for sale by one of the third party sellers who use Amazon's platform virtual virtual shopfront. Other sellers were offering used copy for about $35, but the seller of the virgin book minor had more ambition, had more has more ambition, had more ambitious price of 1.7 million plus 3.99 shipping charges. Clearly, they weren't going to leave money on the table. Interesting. That would have that would have been eye-popping enough. But another third-party seller was also offering an unused copy of the same book. Their price 2.1 million plus yes 3.99 shipping. Ethan knew there wasn't anything about the book that would justify auction house levels of pricing. So how had the price reached such a wide level? A glitch, he thought, or a joke? Next day, he reloaded the page to see whether the prices had been corrected. Not at all. Both prices had gone up, and over the coming days, they kept going up. After a while, Eisen detected a subtle but deterministic pattern. Most of the time, bookseller A was exactly 27% more expensive than bookseller B. But once a day, B raised its price to within 0.0% of A's price. Later in the day, A would hitch its price upwards and re-establish the previous gap of 27%. Next day, B would again edge up to within 0.7% of A's newer price, and so on. But why? Eisen eventually decided it was an algorithmically driven sales tactic in the face of scarcity by two systems operating without any knowledge of each other. So here the two system means seller A is one system, seller B is one system. Interesting. This is something I never heard before. The rules they were using are simple to state. These algorithms sort out the sellers offering the most expensive copy of the book or possibly the second cheapest. We we can't be certain in this scenario and set its price 0.7% below that. People doing a search would see the two and bookseller B hoped hoped opt to buy the cheaper one. His algorithm, meanwhile, was built for what appeared to be different business model. Bookseller A would fulfill orders for books by first buying them from other Amazon sellers and then reselling them. His algorithm therefore sought out the seller offering the cheapest copy of the book and then advertise the same book with 27% added to the price plus the same shipping charges. In normal market, the price hike would provide enough margin to make money and ensure no money lost on shipping. This was a viable method because A had a good seller reputation on Amazon as Eason verified A's reputation was better. A's reputation was better than B and cheaper seller. So how had the price gone mad? Because the market for the brand new book about fruit flies considered only two sellers, A and B, and their price without interruption because nothing was happening to stop them. Nobody was going to buy a book with multi-million dollar price tag. But the algorithm but didn't know that. Like the programs playing Breakout, they just had a task, not an understanding of its meaning. By the time Eason noticed it. Phony price war had been going on for the about 6 weeks. The algorithm continued chasing each other into the stratosphere. 10 days after Eason first looked, Ace price was Ace price hit 23,698,655.93. At that point, some trigger was tripped. The next price for the non-existent book would would have been 30 million, which perhaps exceeded the internal Amazon price limit. At that point, the price reset, and the B, which remember probably did have a fresh copy of the book that ultimately its retailer wanted to sell, brought the price down to $106. Predictably enough, a, a set its a set its price of 27% higher at $134.97 in mid 2019. The prices for new copies range from 59 to about $118. A year later, there were only two sellers at 57 and 66. None was none was the one Eason had documented, though perhaps one of them had bought B's virgin book and was now reoffering it. That ability for algorithm with apparently sensible rules to spiral out of control when unsupervised is what scares many people who work closely with them. We keep giving bigger and bigger responsibilities to more and more complex algorithms because the tasks that we are trying to manage are getting bigger and bigger. These days, algorithms, especially machine learning ones, are getting the plum jobs, playing chess and Go, spotting copyright infringement on YouTube, and increasingly choosing what we get what we get to see on social networks. What if what if the algorithm in charge acted beyond expectations like these book selling book selling ones, except that they had the power to alter the way people think and how they perceived the world? And what if on that seeing that happen, the people who designed the algorithm declared that there was nothing wrong. All social networks live by their three rules. The first, get as many users as can. The second, don't let go of the user's attention. The third, which is obeyed by which is obeyed by varying degrees. Monetize those attentive users as much as you can without losing their attention. If you do anyone if you do anyone without the other two, you will have minimal success. Execute two well and you might prosper. Do all three at once, you can own the world. The way we get as many users as possible is to make access free and fund it with adverts preying on attention. That's the price anyone can afford because while incomes vary wildly, the attention economy ultimate is the ultimate socialist paradise. Everybody is allocated same 24 hours per day. Time is the universe's most equitable distributed form of wealth. Before Facebook, the model for advertising driven online businesses was Google, where if you typed Sony camera into the search box, interested you might be interested in buying one. So it made sense to show you adverts about Sony cameras or other cameras because you might be persuaded to change your mind. Google introduced an auction system for those ads called AdWords, which took off and made lots of people, especially at Google, rich. Facebook planned to do much the same, but because people wouldn't be searching for items they wanted to buy, people's desires would have to be inferred from combination of things: their personal profile, the things they spent time looking at, the people they connected with in time. Facebook would buy huge amounts of data about its users users from credit checking companies so that advertisers would target them better. An improvement an improvement for which advertisers were happy to pay more. But the basic premise remained the same between Google and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and later Snapchat. Advertising keeps the lights on. The big problem, though, was maintaining attention. Like TV networks in the past, every social network looked for the magic hit that would maximize the amount of time people spent with them. That entailed becoming as addictive as possible. How would you, how, how though, do you create an addictive experience from the random things people type into a status box asking what's on in what's on your mind at the time people had to go and look at their friends wall to see what had been written there. How could you instead bring the most interesting content to people? That was the puzzle that group of group that a group at Facebook was chewing over ahead of the sites opening up beyond college users in 2006. The prevailing method of showing content to users was the chronological, reverse chronological series by then common in blogs. The top of the page showed the most recent item posted by your friends. The second was the next most recent, and so on, back through history. The format is easy to generate from a database, as all that is needed is the timestamp of the post to output them in their order. But it's uh, vulnerable, it's vulnerable to overload. Even if you only limit the potential posts to the past week, the average user with the average number of friends could be shown any of 15,000 different pieces of content from friends, groups they belong, and to pages they have liked. Sturgeon's law, which holds the 90% everything, Sturgeon's law, which holds that 90% of everything is crap, applies particularly on social media posts, even from friends. Zipf's law, the 80-20 dynamic also applies. In any large enough group, some people will post a lot more than others. If someone boring is churning out their 15th post of the day about potholes in the roads, you might not care, they are but they will dominate the reverse chronological format. Pretty soon you will grow bored and move on to the something else, perhaps Twitter. Facebook realized that its busiest users could actually be the biggest challenge to growth. The problem resembled that of a search in the years before Google, and when search engines ranked sites ranked sites based on how many times they use a particular word or a phrase. The noisiest pages would appear top in search only when Google began ranking sites using PageRank algorithm, which measured how pages pointed to each other as a measure of their perceived authority. Did web search become effective? The group at the group at Facebook, which included Mark Zuckerberg, Aaron Sittig, and Adam Mosseri, and others, devised a system that revolutionized social media posts in a way comparable to Google and search 10 years earlier. They called it EdgeRank. Interesting. A cheeky poke at the giant company and created something that would wipe rivals of the rivals of the web. EdgeRank was a system that considered each piece of content, which Facebook called an object. The object's edges were given values, your relationship to the poster, friend, family, the type of content, text, photo, video, how you had responded to an object like that previously, how many interactions the object already had, how old it was. Every edge value also had a weighting that influence how likely the system was to show that object to you. Just as Google's PageRank aimed to solve the problem of picking the site from the web's vastness that best answered any particular search, Facebook EdgeRank aimed to solve the fundamental problem that as a social network grows and connections between its members grow, the number of updates that could be shown to anyone tends towards infinity. Zuckerberg had and his colleagues saw the edge rank system as so important that they filed for a patent, which was later granted in March 2009. It won't expire before December 2030. Introducing Newsfeed, the product manager at the time, Ruchi Sangfi, wrote that the features it would bring are not only different from anything we have had on Facebook before, but they are quite unlike anything you can find on the web. Okay. Oh, okay. So we have a question from what kind of engagement are we talking about? The self-inflicted pain one or the algorithm-inflicted one? Okay, interesting question. What kind of engagement we are talking about? The self-inflicted pain one or the algorithm-inflicted one? I think we're talking about the algorithm in general. So it's it has little bit of technical content, but a very accessible book. Cool. Okay, if you have any other questions, you can ask. And let me now do something interesting. Let me throw open the stream to the people. So if you want to talk about social media, are you addicted? How do you like social media? You can come and talk to us. And let me now read through the book. It's very interesting to read, but I will stop reading book in about 15 minutes, and then you can ask your questions and come on the stream and talk about it. There had been and still are plenty of successful sites not reliant on algorithms to choose what to show to people. Facebook led the way in abandoning any sort of human input to rank your likely interest in any particular piece of content. This in turn opened the door for all the effects of algorithmic amplification to take over. Newsfeeds achieved Newsfeed achieved what its inventors wanted. People were able to much more easily find content they wanted. Yet, its introduction in September 2006 was such a dramatic shift from what Facebook users had been used to seeing that many protested. Their friends activists were brought their friends' activities were brought to them unasked. They felt it was intrusive compared to what had gone before. Now, they were told if two people had just become friends, that someone liked a TV show or that someone else had just changed from being in a relationship to a single, many early users found it overwhelming. Dana Boyd, the sociologist, observed that the change meant Facebook is giving me the gift of infinite gossip, but I don't want it. Facebook says the news feed is here. The news feed is here to stay. This makes me sad. I understand why they wanted to provide it. I understand what users are tempted by it. But I also think that it is unhealthy and socially disruptive. I also think that it will be gamed. Now, what is gamed? So it's called gamification. So if you play a game, you have rules you play by. And if somebody is able to get the rules, understand, like he can actually then change the game's outcome by following rules without achieving what is meant for. That's called gamification. That you can uh, impersonate a great cricketer just by knowing the game of cricket well, how it is played. It's called game. So if you correct, you would know correct. You will see SEO, search 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 engine optimization. That is called gamification of search engine optimization, where you manipulate the rules or manipulate the rules in a way, or you create inputs in such a way that your search product becomes number one on Google. That is called gamification. By 2011, Facebook had grown so vast that the simple rules that had been hard coded in with EdgeRank weren't sufficient to satisfy the demands of holding hundreds of millions of users' attention. They were all too subtly different. It switched instead to an ML system that weighed as many as 100,000 different elements of an object in deciding whether to show it or to someone. One important element in that decision was how much other people interacted with content, said Lars Backstrom, the engineering manager for newsfeed ranking in 2013 interview. If 100 users were shown an update and only a couple of them bothered to interact with it, commenting, liking, we may not show it to your newsfeed. But if a lot of people are interacting with it, we might decide to show you, show it to you. So this is called gamification. If you can gather enough people to like, comment on a content artificially, then you can game the system to make the content go viral and be shown to everybody. And they might not like the content at all because they have been told to do so. So this is how gamification happens. Facebook even used Facebook internally to run the company as it grew. Communications between managers and the staff were increasingly handled through ring-fenced version called Workplace. I think we would have seen the Workplace ad when people were using Facebook. I don't use it anymore. Okay. Of the same called Workplace of the same system that ordinary users saw. In a hint of troubles to come, some employees learned how to game the game the system so their complaints or requests would be noticed by managers, express themselves more bluntly express themselves more bluntly that they were more likely to be distributed in the feed. The same system was used to create the advertising system. Micro targeting used the same functionality as the news feed, except that advertisers were paying to reach people rather than post, posting and hoping people might see it. The advertiser could specify, say, that they wanted to be seen by men over 50 who lived in Pennsylvania and owned sports cars, and Facebook would show them the ad to them. One important wrinkle was that the price of the advert depended not only on how many people it would be shown to, but also on how attractive Facebook's ML system thought the advert would be to that audience. Adverts adverts judged more interestingly were adverts judged more interesting were less expensive. Okay, that's interesting. Adverts judged more interesting were less expensive because they would maintain people's attention on the site. Self-fulfilling prophecy. The game was all about attention. After all, boring content, even paying adverts, didn't fit the bill. But the newsfeed content can do more than just hold attention. In June 2014, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America published a paper with a surprising title: Experimental Evidence of a Massive Scale Emotional Contagion Through Social Networks. Even more surprising was that the lead author, Adam Kramer, worked at Facebook and had run an experiment using 700,000 of sites users as unwitting lab rats to see whether their emotions could be affected by changing what was shown in their news feed. The work built on earlier social science experiments that had found that among personal groups, mood was effectively contagious. Happy people could spread happiness, gloomy people could make you gloomy too. The basis for that the basis for that was 20-year-long study on the non-electronic societal network of more than 4,000 people. Kramer, with two co-authors from Cornell University, confirmed that the Facebook statuses could do the same. They found that if you took away the happy posts from people's news feeds, they responded with gloomier posts themselves. If you look away, if you took away, if you took away the glum posts, leaving happier ones, people cheered up and responded in kind. The finding might seem obvious, but establishing it scientifically mattered, at least to Kramer and his co-authors, because if science is about anything, it's about demonstrating whether things that seem obvious are actually true. Often they aren't. Proving that electronic social networks could generate the same effect as physical interaction was good news, wasn't it? Furthermore, the work had been done on a far bigger scale and much more quickly. The experimental phase only took a week than previous studies. However, the reaction from other scientists and the public suggested that this really wasn't seen as good news. Where exactly had first of all, where exactly had people consented to this manipulation of their feelings in a gigantic social science experiment? Second, who could or would rein in Facebook if it wanted to do other experiments? Sociologist Zeynep Tufekci, who is also an associate professor at the University of North Carolina, pointed out that this indicated much bigger potential problem under the surface. The existence of data and studies like this meant that corporations could model the behaviors and response of individuals, do not not just narrow demographics. It is clear that the powerful have increasingly more ways to engineer the public, and this is true for Facebook. This is true for presidential campaigns. This is true for other larger actors, big corporations and governments. She wrote in June 2014. Jim Jim Sheridan, okay, Jim Sheridan, an MP in the UK Parliament, told the Guardian newspaper, "I am worried about the ability of Facebook and others to manipulate people's thoughts in politics and other areas. If people are being thought controlled this kind of way, there needs to be a protection, and they at least need to know about it." Tufekci agreed. "I say we should care whether Facebook can manipulate emotions or voting behavior, regardless of the merits or strength of finding of one study." After such thorough roasting, Facebook rode back hurriedly on the idea of running any more such studies. Kramer did publish a long defense of the work, saying he felt it was important to investigate the common worry that seeing friends post positive content leads to people feeling negative or left out. Facebook argued that people had consented to the studies by accepting its site's terms of use, which included the phrase, "We use the information we receive about you for internal operations, including troubleshooting, data analysis, testing, research, and service improvements." Research, it said, research, it said it right there, didn't it? But this wasn't just observation, it was manipulation. And in the scientific world, that requires informed consent, which hadn't been properly acquired. Facebook went quiet on the studies, but the newsfeed algorithm had been revealed as a gigantic lever for anyone who wanted to manipulate people or their emotions for their for their own ends, along with the micro-targeted advertising that made it possible to tailor adverts to tiny cohorts within much bigger groups, knowing that only they would see them wallpapered around or inside their newsfeed. The site's news algorithm had turned into a sort of rat maze. Once inside, you might become the subject of a giant experiment that you couldn't perceive from your vantage point. The algorithm could shift your emotions as Facebook or a savvy manipulator wanted, and you couldn't even be aware what was going on. Subtle, smooth, analog, social warming quietly at work. The problem overlooked by those who rely so heavily on algorithms, including ML systems, is that they are immoral. They are immoral, both in the sense that they do not know what morals are, and they will act in ways that humans, aware of what we see as rules, will interpret as callous and transgressive. The indifference to rules can surprise humans who tend to see them implicitly. In 2018, an international group of researchers collected a set of anecdotes about what they called the surprising creativity of artificial intelligence systems and published them as scientific paper. Many of the examples were amusing, even delightful, in demonstrating how the programs had circumvented the rules of the programmers thought they had set. One experiment tried to generate virtual creatures that could walk, measuring success by virtual distance covered in 10 seconds. Rather than developing legs, as the experimenters had expected, the digital creatures evolved to be taller and taller than fall over, thus winning despite not having taken a step. Some worked out how to somersault in midair to extend the distance. Another tasked with designing lenses for optical systems refined its product for accuracy. The lenses eventually offered, if made, would have between 20 meters to 60 feet thick. Okay. Some of the examples were more alarming in their implications for humans. One project sought to evolve an algorithm for controlling landing brakes landing brakes for the arresting gear on aircraft carriers. An incoming plane trails an incoming plane trails a hook on landing that landing that snags a steel cable pulled out across the deck, which is attached to two giant drums on either side, with more cables spooled around them. As the cable pays out, brakes on the drums slow them down until the plane stops. The tricky part is applying just right amount of braking force at the right time in a high energy process lasting few seconds and involving multi-ton equipment. Computers able to measure and respond to changes in microseconds should be able to do so far better than a simple mechanical brake or one reliant on comparatively slow human reaction. The algorithm's goal was to stop the plane while minimizing the force exerted on the combination of pilot, aircraft, hook, and drums. The researchers at Swede at a suite called Robert Welt set up a simulation in which the system would keep trying combinations of force and timing until it found the ideal solution and left it running. To his surprise, the program claimed to have worked out a solution almost immediately, even for the heaviest aircraft. Felt had expected the process to require multiple refinements. In fact, the evolutionary software algorithm solution had discovered a bug in the computer program that calculated the force exerted. If the algorithm applied a gigantic force on the braking system, the number wasn't stored. And so, regi- okay, number wasn't stored and so registered as zero. The aircraft and cable systems would have been wrecked, and the pilot might have been dead. But the algorithm was satisfied that the job would have been done. The authors noted that those working on self-teaching systems should be more skeptical of their ability to correctly specify robust fitness functions and anticipate evolution iteratively, revealing such specification failures. In other words, you are not so smart and machines are relentless, and life, including the artificial form, will find a way to reach the goal you have set. But you don't know what rules will ride roughhold over the process. We tend to forget that machines don't have our human implicit knowledge, the things that we know and that we know others know. So we need not even mention that in a discussion. That's the problem with trusting ML systems whose workings we can't examine. We don't know what shortcuts they are taking or collateral damage they are ignoring in order to reach the goal they have been given. Frequently, once such systems are unleashed on a social network, their creators find themselves wrestling helplessly against unintended consequences. Amplification is a natural outcome of the desire to get somebody to click on something to, to convert somebody, whether it is an ideology or clicking on buy now, says Alex Putowski, the presenter of the long running BBC radio program, The Digital Human, who also holds a PhD in psychology. This is what we are being asked to do because it supports the financial model of the internet. But it also means that the being is constructed in a way that is being reinforced and reinforced. And then, hey, presto, quell, quell surprise, tada, here we are, isolated from one another, becoming more and more entrenched in our own view. We will end our reading today at page 47. We will start reading from just how dangerous that entrenchment is in our next reading session. Okay, it is interesting. Okay, we don't have a lot of people asking questions. Okay, and we have one question. We are talking about holy matrimony. Okay. Mm, mm, no, actually not. If you can specify the question, I will try to answer. I don't see any more questions here. So, but I will wait for a few minutes till people are asking some question, and then, or else we will end our session for reading today. Maybe if I get time, I'll try to read the book tomorrow as well. This looks very interesting book indeed in terms of its content and the way it is giving us a lot of information and warnings about social media in general. So this is something which is really interesting. Anyway, all good. Let me see if anybody has any more questions. Hmm. Not not too many questions. Anyway, we will maybe get some more questions in our next reading session. It's a new book. Cool. So, thank you everybody for listening to this reading session, and join us maybe tomorrow again. I'll try to read the book and few more pages of this book. Thank you. Jai Shri Ram. Vande Mataram. Yes, I will try to read more of it. This is something which is very important topic. Actually, like these books are not available in general, so I picked the book in the airport, and this is something we need to talk about. That there are very good things about social media, but there are also very bad things about it, and we need to guard against these bad influences to make sure that it doesn't affect our lives, because it affects our lives physically, ourselves, our friends, our family, our parents. Everybody is getting impacted by this, not not virtually but also physically. So yes, I will try to maybe ask somebody to talk about this as well. Now maybe I will ask some psychologists to come and discuss in detail sometime if I get a chance to do that. But thank you for this. Okay, thank you everybody for joining, and see you tomorrow again. We'll try to read the book and try to finish it, and maybe have some guests also come and talk about this, the impact of social media and bad impact of it. Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram.